Because at the end of the day, people can't change unless they know that there is a problem. Hey party members, welcome back to LARP 101, where I answer your questions about LARP. If you're new to this channel, LARP stands for live action roleplay, and it is essentially a game of make-believe that you play with other grown-ups. This week, let's not beat about the bush and let's dive straight into this week's question. Can you tell us about any instances where you've had to deal with a problematic player? Do you have any methods for handling cheaters/abusers without breaking character? So, for full disclosure, I've never run a LARP. I've assisted in running LARPs. I have NPC'd at a large fest system. I have NPC'd at smaller games. And I have essentially been, you know, a monster/dog's body for games as well. But I've never actually been a game runner. So it's kind of hard for me to talk about how to deal with problematic players, because in general, the people who should be dealing with problematic players 99% of the time should be your game runners. Ultimately, the game runners are the ones who have invested their time, invested their energy, and are most invested in having a good and productive game that people enjoy. If players come along and disrupt that, it is their job to manage it. That being said, you as a player can assist them in doing this. So let's go through steps about how to deal with problematic players at events. Before an event even starts, there should be some guidance on how players are expected to conduct themselves at their event. I won't go to any event that hasn't had this delivered to players in some fashion, preferably in writing, but I will take it in an oral briefing as well. Ideally, both. Because I'd like to have a reminder before I go to the event, and I want a reminder literally before we get started at the event itself. And that guidance should have clear expectations of behaviour, as well as what the consequences for that kind of behaviour will be. Clarity is key in this scenario. So things I would expect to see: a zero tolerance policy for any form of discrimination, which includes racism, transphobia, homophobia. I would also expect a zero tolerance policy for harassment, as well as a zero tolerance policy for out of character violence. And the consequences I would expect to see for this would be complete bans from the game or system. What I also expect to see is a clear bit of guidance on how a complaint about such behaviour should be escalated. So if I was to witness some form of discrimination or harassment, or be the victim of some discrimination or harassment, I want to know who to report it to get it dealt with as quickly as possible. And this should be identifiable in writing before the game starts and reminded to players when they arrive on site. In terms of people who cheat and people who abuse the rules, these are by far some of the most irritating and frustrating people you can ever come across at a LARP. And for some reason, they always seem to think they're the exception to the rule, that the rules don't apply to them for some reason. And undoubtedly, when you come into clashing with these people, it leads to a lot of frustration, because this game only works if everybody is adhering to the same set of rules. And the thing is, you don't want to always escalate immediately necessarily to a ref or a game runner if you feel like the issue can be dealt with by yourself. Because let's face it, 90% of the time I find when someone violates a rule, it's a mistake. Some of these games have so many rules, have large, thick rule books. Some don't. Mechanics vary from game to game. You get some that have very heavy mechanics, which means the rule books can be quite large. And sometimes you're very light on sort of mechanics and more heavy on roleplay, which means the rule book is generally a lot thinner. But 90% of the time I find if someone breaks the rule, it's a mistake. And usually when you highlight that to somebody, they're usually incredibly apologetic and don't repeat the issue. So whenever I see a rule breaker, my first instinct is to always assume that it's a mistake. because they've come to play the game. So why would they violate the rules when they've come in knowing that they are agreeing to play the game the way it's written? And like I said, most people stop poor behaviour as soon as they realise it's happened. However, once you've highlighted it to somebody, and then they keep doing it again, and again, and again, it's not so easily brushed off. And that's the point where it is important to get your game runners in. Because at the end of the day, if you have a confrontation with another player, not only are you causing yourself a lot of stress and a lot of hassle, but you're also probably violating the conduct policy yourself, because there's no need to have any form of frustrated or aggressive behavior. That is what your game runners are for. And the most important thing when you're dealing with, you know, people who are violating the rules is that you keep yourself squeaky clean. So don't involve yourself. Do not engage with them. Do not challenge them. Go straight to your game runner or the referee or whoever is overseeing the bit of roleplay you are in and talk to them. In general, I find that confronting people after the initial conversation rarely goes well. It makes people defensive. It makes people aggressive. So go to that ref, explain what's going on, let the ref deal with it. If the behaviour continues after the ref has dealt with it, ignore it, continue on with your game, and when the game is over, contact the game runners and provide feedback. It is okay to provide negative feedback to game runners. It's how they improve their game, and you should especially do that when it comes to issues of conduct and flagrant rule breaking. Because at the end of the day, people can't change unless they know that there is a problem. So I always encourage you, if you have a negative experience at LARP, regardless of what it is, provide feedback. The only other thing that you should keep in mind when you're at a LARP event is sometimes not every rule that you interact with interacts in the exact same way with other people. So it is very possible that you will complain to a game runner about an issue that, for reasons unknown to you, are not actually an issue. And that is another reason why going and confronting people about things you think are problems is going to possibly cause further problems. For instance, just as an example, I play a system which involves hit points, and people have a set number of hit points. It can vary, but you know, it varies between 1 per location and 3 hits per location. That is generally considered to be the norm. However, there are circumstances in the game that allow people to take on a lot more hit points. In the last year or so, I've had circumstances where I have been on 8 or 9 hit points per location, and I know people who have had hit points in the 11s, the 12s, the 13s. But there's a lot of exceptional circumstances that make it so. And so when you end up in a fight and you're fighting somebody who doesn't know you and doesn't know, you know, the items you have on you, the special abilities certain things in the game give you to have, it can look like you're cheating because they've hit you 3-4 times and you're still not going down. But under the game rules, I did not have to disclose to other players that I have, for instance, 8 hit points per location. So that player could report me to a referee for cheating. Under those circumstances, I would expect the referee to pull me aside and check me. And that check should go quite well. It should be conducted in a polite and professional manner by both the referee and the person being checked. And when it comes to referees, you should always be very honest about what abilities you have and why things may have gone a certain way. And ultimately, that game runner will make the ruling on whether you have cheated or not. But it doesn't just mean game mechanics. There can be allowances put in place for people with disabilities, with mental health issues, for a variety of reasons, none of which are your business. So it is really important to keep in mind that if you think somebody is cheating, there's a possibility that an exception has been made for them down the road. And you might think that's fair or not. But again, that is up to the game runner's discretion. If you think that is unfair, provide it in feedback, but you are not entitled to necessarily know. And ultimately, it is the game runner's final decision. So when you're looking at people who you think are cheating or breaking rules or just generally being a bit of an arse, go to your game runners, because they will always have a bigger picture and they will always be the people who are most responsible for the conduct of their players and how they are dealt with. And just for 100% clarity, because I like to, leave this on a 100% clear note, I am under no circumstances saying that you have to tolerate bad behaviour at LARP. If there is behaviour that is making you uncomfortable or that you feel is unsafe, you are absolutely 100% in your right to withdraw from that set of circumstances and to report it to game runners. And I absolutely encourage you to do so. Missing stairs are a problem in our community. They absolutely have no place there. So it is really, really important that if you think something is going on, that you do report it. LARP is a place though where you should feel safe and you should feel happy and where everybody should be getting along in a wonderful manner to create a fantastic game. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please submit them in the comment section below. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I am desperately trying to hit 1,500 subscribers really soon. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying happy, and I will see you on a battlefield soon.